Jacobians.
You know, the original intention of home consoles was to bring the arcade experience home. At least that was the aim back in the early days of gaming. All consoles from the late 70s to the early 80s tried their best to replicate the great arcade titles of the time. Some did better than others, but if you wanted the best in gaming of the day, you would head over to the arcade. But even so, home systems of the day tried their best to represent their arcade counterparts. There are many examples to highlight what I'm saying, but at random, I've decided to choose this obscure title, Gorf. Gorf for the arcades. You know the name stands for something, right? Gorf means Galactic Orbiting Robot Force. Who knew? It's the early 80s. The video game scene in general is booming, with arcades racking in the quarters and the home market is selling record-breaking numbers for the time. All of this can be credited to the majorly successful games that would come out, like Pac-Man, Galaga, Defender, Donkey Kong, Frogger, and Tempest, just to name a few. Some ports would follow, of course, some looking like their arcade brothers, while others were, well, not even close. With all the prosperity going around with some titles, it caught the attention of wannabe copycats trying to take a little of the profit for themselves. But the money milking didn't always come from unknown companies, but sometimes the companies that made them. Bally Midway was a prime example of this, cashing in on the fever Pac-Man created that would lead to their licensing deal with Namco terminated. But before that, Bally Midway tried to milk a little out of Namco's finest space shooters, which would take part in the title known as Gorf. This game was originally released in February of 1981, and it received above average reception upon release, which is good for them. It was milked money worth milked. And I don't know about you, but I think I'll be on Urban Dictionary tomorrow. God, I hope I'm actually clever. But what interests me the most is why isn't this game talked about more often, especially when it was considered a good game and got a fair amount of ports? Well, I aim to figure that out and see if the old hype stands tall as we take a better look at Gorf. You know what was brought to my attention while doing research on this game? Gorf is actually the word frog backwards. It's amazing what you don't notice, but there is a reason that I'll get into as we go along. You control a starship and have to shoot up the many fleets of the Gorfian Empire across 5 different screens. The game was developed by Nutting Associates and designed by Jamie Fenton, whose nickname happened to be Frog during his college days. And if it's alright with him, I'm gonna call him Jamie Froggy for the remainder of this video. So Jamie Froggy made the plot go like this. You have been assigned by the Interstellar Space Force to carry out 5 different missions to prevent the Gorfian Empire from destroying Earth. The first mission is Astro Battles, already starting off the money milking with this obvious clone of Space Invaders. I mean, they had the licensing rights to that too, but man, they had no shame. But before I throw too much harsh judgment, let's go over what makes it different. For one, you're able to move freely around in any direction below the lower thirds of the screen, which wasn't a common sight in any space shooter, so that's cool. Plus you have an invisible barrier to protect yourself from enemy fire for as long as the enemies stay above it, with also additional bonus enemy types flying on the top area. This is a simple Space Invaders mission, destroy the whole fleet to move right along to the next mission, Laser Attack. This one is a little more creative with 2 plus-sign shaped fleets of ships, one of which having a laser beam stream that could block you into submission or just make you explode and lose a life. But this is a fairly simple mission that you'll probably breeze through. Kinda makes me think of a free-roaming Galaxian of sorts. Now, if they actually had Galaxian on here as one of the missions, I would laugh my ass off. I would. Oh. You know what makes this twice as worse? There's a Galaxian machine right behind me at this arcade. This is what I was alluding to at the beginning, and you may think my intros don't matter, but really, this is money milking at its finest. I always thought to myself that some games looked cheap when they took successful game concepts and put their own spin on it, but this came from a big player in the arcade scene, which is baffling. I mean, some clones do look cheap. I mean, look at Crazy Kong or those early Taito cocktails. But this game is in a whole different league. You don't know how to describe it. But I will admit it doesn't take away from the fun of it, as it somehow just works as it is. So far, I'm liking how it plays and getting a kick out of the variety, no matter how weird it is. This is one of the first games to offer multiple screens too, so it's got innovation to its namesake, thanks to Mr. Froggy. Anyway, after the Galaxians, you'll make your way to Mission 4, Space Warp. By far the most visually impressive level, with the warping lines and the illusion of enemies coming in from the background. Not as good as Gyrus, but still passable. This can be either easy or semi-challenging depending on where you place your shots. One thing I should have pointed out earlier is that I think this is one of the very few games that let you keep shooting firepower, but taking away the bullet you shot if it's still on screen. So you'll definitely want to make sure you aim at your targets and make those shots count, especially when you make it to the final mission, Flagship. Here you're basically doing a role reversal of sorts, as the main baddie has the shield while you sit in the open trying to avoid its firepower. The task at hand is to shoot through or at the ship's core to destroy it. Shooting other parts of the ship will cause them to fly off towards you that you could shoot again for extra bonuses, but a well-placed shot will cause its demise with a satisfying yet loud explosion. After the 5th mission, you'll rise up in the ranks on the right hand side and start back over at Mission 1 with increased difficulty. Every time you defeat the Gorfian Empire, you'll continue to rank up, the best rank being of Space Avenger. So there is a little incentive other than a high score to keep going, if the voice doesn't drive you crazy to make you leave an annoyance.
Bad move, bad space cadet, galactic defender, you are, ha 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 ha.
Another first this game can be credited for was the use of synthesized speech. It's very funny and computerized sounding, but that was the best it could do. At least it would get better with Wizard of War. That robot's got a sick mustache. I'm not sure whose side the voice is on anyway, as he could be taunting you on one screen, then congratulating you on the next.
Make up your mind, Jill Wizard.
Regardless of allegiance, if you get hit by anything, you'll blow up and lose a life. Lose all your lives and you'll explode differently to signify that your game is at an end. And that's how you play, pretty much. Fun game from my point of view. Some places creative, other places milking whatever money is left. But there was still money to be made in the home console market, which is what we're going to do now. Look at some of its home ports. But just one problem. How am I going to get this home?
Hey buddy, you still playing this game?
Oh no, I was trying to figure out how I was going to take this home with me.
Oh! Well, I can help you with that.
How so?
Simple. I'm Mr. Arcade.
Huh? What? Wait. No, you don't mean this Mr. Arcade.
Yeah, well, since the crash of '83, I've stayed out of the limelight. I've played a lot of games at my parents' house, but with the resurgence of these arcades, I thought maybe I'd better come and check one out myself.
Well, that's good. What brought you here?
I heard about this place. You know, they got my favorite candy.
Oh, I see.
So, you want me to help you or what?
Sure, go ahead.
Well then alright, stand back a bit.
What was that?
Hey, it was the best I can do.
Well, what happened to turning machines into tabletop systems?
Hey man, things have been hard lately. Coleco owns the rights to my powers. I can only do their games. And besides, the tabletop of this was never in the works. See ya, buddy.
Wait, but... So, here we are with the ColecoVision port. Let's see if Coleco's vision matches Bally Midway's. At the start, it already seems about above average with an additional music cue, and it has pretty much all you would expect from the first level minus a few visual changes, but I would also argue that they added more to the visuals to compensate for the minute downgrade, giving us stars off the bat in the first mission. The second mission carries on in the stars with the first big difference. Only one laser attack force instead of two, but that's actually by design, as you'll get a second one alongside if you make it around. The biggest change comes in at the third mission, as we go straight to space warp, skipping Galaxians altogether. Where's my budget Galaxians? I imagine licensing issues are to blame, as Atari would later release their own version of Galaxian on the 2600. Again, my intros have meaning, but that shouldn't take away from this level still being loads of fun to look at and play. And I don't know how, but they may have made this level easier, as I seem to have flown right by it and it was easy to shoot the ships. Not that I'm complaining, just noting a comparison, of course. Following that is the flagship, which looks very different, but the goal is still the same. Shoot your way through to the core for a satisfying explosion so you can move on up in the rankings and keep on doing the same thing. That's all there is to it, really. A good port all around. It may not be exactly the same, but it did its best. The graphics pulled off here were fine. They did a good job to make it almost arcade perfect, and it controls almost the same. Yeah, it may not have the Galaxian level nor the voice synthesis, and maybe have the occasional hiccup, but it's always important to know that this is from a time where technology was not on par with one another, and it's best to take what you have and make the best out of it. Now I have to wonder if Gorf would have ever made it to the IntelliVoice module. But hey, I still had an enjoyable experience with this port. It doesn't look like Gorf could be made bad at home either. Then again, Atari was around, but they wouldn't dare botch an arcade port, would they? Then again, this port didn't come from Atari themselves, instead from CBS Electronics. The broadcasting company got into games and had a decent catalog to its credit. Another tidbit worth noting is that CBS was able to market the ColecoVision outside of the United States. Isn't it weird how it all came together? Still makes you wonder why they would screw over this port. Now don't get me wrong, it's still Gorf to the best of their abilities, but it looks so plain. I mean, the first level is just blatantly Space Invaders in spite of what the manual says, and you can't move freely, only side to side, which is a bummer. And I don't know if my eyes are deceiving me, but...
Are the enemies smirking?
The first mission was a breeze, but the second level turned it up to unfair in an instant. I don't know what the hell they did with the programming, but the laser attack was so freaking hard for whatever reason. The enemies move so fast, it's like they were thinking, oh, our port looks like crap, we gotta change it around somehow. And one of the employees said, hey boss, have you ever tried acid? Brilliant! But no, this just makes the game bad in my opinion. It made what was once the fun and creative section unfair and a for sure death trap. The third level can be hit or miss, trading in the warp for just visual representation of the enemies that are just a lie and for visual show. But whatever, I'm not expecting much anymore. The enemies can either be an easy hit or downright dirty with their firepower, so graphics I guess were traded for a higher difficulty. One step backward. Actually two. Oh boy, I can't wait to see how the flagship turns out. I just made it look easy. Call it my Gond moment from Vanguard. But that's all there is to Gorf on Atari. Barely looks like it, plays close to it. If you want to try it out, go for it. What you see is what you get. And again, yeah, the Galaxian section is out of this port, but Atari would release their version sometime later, and... well, they tried. So obviously the game doesn't have any real music tracks, so we'll just skip over that segment. Extra content, however, they're few and far between. The Atari port has nothing left to offer, which lets the difficulty switches and game select switch go to waste, but Coleco has a few difficulty settings and 2-player mode, so that's a step in the right direction.
Sorry, Atari.
The arcade machine can have you change some game settings within it, or let you attempt to take on the game with lesser lives, maybe even fiddling with the voice synthesis.
Is that your all of workers in your pocket, or are you just happy to teammate?
I am a child.
There wasn't a record about how well this game or the ports I looked at sold, but the ColecoVision port was received favorably, while the Atari version got average appraisal. Gorf was also ported to the Atari 8-bit computers, Atari 5200, the BBC Micro, plus the Commodore 64 and VIC-20. The game was originally conceived as a movie tie-in with Star Trek the Motion Picture, but was later to be thought as not a good fit with a video game. Oh, how wrong they were. And there also was a planned sequel titled Ms. Gorf that went unreleased, though it's thought the prototype is in the hands of the original developer, Jamie Froggy. Today, it's a fondly remembered game to most, with a few occasional homebrews popping up here and there. Plus, the high score is still competed for today, if they are real to begin with anyway.
So, what is my rate to play?
The golden age of gaming produced many fine arcade titles, many of which would become accessible to many gamers and their home console of choice. Some were good, some were bad, others weird or simply copycats. This one may have gotten a mix of it all. The arcade game was an interesting cash-in of great concepts and mixed it in with some new ones, but it was able to stand out in other ways, and whether it tried old or new things, it came together and fit like a glove. The ports I was able to cover did their best to replicate its arcade counterpart. It's clear who did it better, but I'd imagine depending if you thought of the times and figured if you'd have one or the other, you'd appreciate what you had, or just go grab some more quarters. The game as a whole is a neat little gem, worth a play on whatever system you find it on. I'm sure you'd be up for trying out what Milk Money does to shut that dumb robot voice up. It would make Froggy proud.
To conclude, I give this game an overall play rate of... gotta play.
But that's only my opinion. If you have your own thoughts, leave a comment. If you like what you see, leave a like. If you think others could enjoy this, share it around the web. And if you want to see more, subscribe. Anyway, this has been BrianTheBlue Game Reviews, Galactic Orbiting Robot Force. Or simply, Gorf. Brian here saying thanks for watching my game review. You can find me elsewhere like on Co-op.com where me and my friends play through various games for you to see. We do Let's Plays and weekly shows, having fun and getting frustrated in the process. Subscribe today to see what we play next in the coming weeks. Plus, I run the Starfighters Arcade channel. I work at a retro arcade in real life, and there we cover the arcade games with regulars as well as providing tips. You can find out more about the arcade in our commercials, so check us out when you have the time. But don't forget, I have plenty of other content on this channel with original series like quick views, console reviews, AC reviews, and current calamities. From software to hardware, I provide any and all gaming reviews. Check out Jacobians further to see what I have to offer. That's all the promotion from me. Click the I to go watch either the previous or upcoming episodes of Game Reviews.